Guys, what's going on? This is my post-ride review of the Honda Hornet 1000 SP. Now, before I dive too deep into my thoughts on this machine, I've got to send a huge shout out to Hunter, Tommy, and the rest of the crew at Stub Cycles for allowing me to bring this bike to you. And guys, what a bike it is. There's good reason why this motorcycle has been one of the most anticipated to hit American shores in a long time. It is the hottest value proposition hot rod out there if you are into sport naked motorcycles. So what all do you get? Well, for basically $11,000, you get 150 horsepower, a TFT screen, a practically flawless quick shifter, up and down quick shifter, mind you, and electronic throttle mapping that I can't stop bragging about on my ride along video. I'll post a link in the description below so you can see this bike and hear this bike in action. Because it's not just how this bike gets down the road from a performance standpoint, the ergonomics are very comfortable as well. It is more upright, as you would expect. It is a sport naked bike, but it's not too overly upright. It still has a little bit of a bend to the bars. The rear sets where you put your feet aren't too low. They're actually that just right range. Very comfortable, and that allows for a motorcycle that is, well, powerful, compact, playful, and dare I say, one of the more entertaining motorcycles that I've ridden in a long time. The power delivery is very smooth. It's never overwhelming, but you crest past about 7,000 RPM, and it does have a bit of a personality swap. It goes from being fairly smooth and somewhat laid back to, well, the growl that it brings with this bit of fury that it'll throw at you. It doesn't take you by surprise. It almost takes you by surproud, if you will. The bike just proudly jumps forward. It is a very fun and, again, a very playful power delivery. Add all of that together and you come up with a motorcycle that really does perform better than the sum of its parts. Now, speaking of the sum of its parts, yes, the SP does have an Öhlins rear shock. I didn't happen to mention that in the ride-along video. It also has 41 millimeter forks. Again, not ultra top shelf, but the thing about it is for the type of riding that you're going to be doing with this type of bike, yeah, I think it's got, well, basically it's an appropriate suspension package. It's set up a little bit on the stiff side, but I will say this, if you're used to riding sport bikes, well, you're going to feel right at home, at least with the initial suspension setup on the bike. So in saying all that, what are my overall thoughts on the thing? Well, I got to tell you this. From a value proposition, it is incredibly difficult to beat. I mean, you got to remember that this is a motorcycle that kind of forced Suzuki to drop the cost of the GSX S1000. Its only real direct line of sight competitor in terms of displacement and performance. And as far as price point goes, well, here's the thing. For roughly $11,000, you can have 150 horsepower, and that is going to be right along an infringement mark along other middleweight bikes like the MT-09 or say maybe a Z900. See, these are motorcycles that are less powerful and are basically middleweights, but are still going to try to cost roughly the same as the Hornet 1000, arguably with less sophisticated running gear. Again, these are bikes that don't have Öhlins and in some cases don't have TFTs with the GSX S1000. But I gotta tell you, there is a case to be made for the Hornet over any of the other sport nakeds in its class, even those that make more power. Let's take a look at the MT-10, for example. That motorcycle, at least on paper, is showing 168 horsepower at the crankshaft. But that bike is a full $14,000, an extra $3,000 over the entry cost of the Hornet alone. Now, is a few horsepower really worth it? Is the sound of the MT-10 worth that few $1,000s? I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing about the Hornet. It has a very fun and charming grunt, this growl that it has about it once you start really rolling into the throttle. And that, again, aids and acts to bolster up the theater of this motorcycle. Guys, I am gushing a little bit over this bike. I have to admit that I haven't had fun with well, any kind of sport naked in a long time. And by the way, speaking of fun, if you're into doing wheelies, the Hornet's the right bike for you. If you watch the video, there's more than one occasion where I'm floating that front tire. So yeah, it's entertaining, it's fun, but it also speaks to different sides of the aisle when it comes to where do you place this bike, right? So if the question now is, well, who is the audience for this bike? I mean, it's a hot rod, right? 150 horsepower for 11,000 bucks. What's not to like about it? Who would really be the best beneficiary though for a bike like this? Listen, anybody coming up from a middleweight sport naked, and if sport nakeds are your thing, well, you're not going to want to look past the Hornet. It's got great torque delivery just at partial throttle, but when you lean on this thing, it will absolutely get it. And there's really nothing in its price range that can compete with it, save for the GSX S1000. But I just don't know if the S1000 has the, I don't know if it has that theater to it. And again, that intake growl is just, well, for me, I'm into that kind of stuff. You might not really be bothered by it, but I just love those types of quirks when it comes to motorcycles, that personality that it gives it. What about if you're coming from maybe an elevated position and you're from a sport bike background and you're really not into the full fairing thing, not into the fully committed thing anymore, and you're looking for more of a sport naked type of a bike? Well, the Hornet might work really well for that crowd too, because you get a ton of everything that you might be used to in a leader class bike, but it's far less expensive. It's got a bit more of a compliant ride, but it's still very tight like what you are coming from and what you're used to in a sport bike. So yeah, it's definitely worth a look. And if you've got a sport bike, or maybe you've got a more heritage bike in your garage and you want something that is more upright or maybe a little bit more reliable, something that can maybe keep pace a little bit better. If you're more into the old school bikes, you want something newer, man, this Hornet might be right up your alley. It's an easy thing to put in your garage at $11,000, and it's a blast to ride. And by the way, there isn't any kind of print ad that will do this motorcycle justice in terms of looks. It is fine looking, and I gotta tell you, the black and gold scheme that this thing's got going on, it's kind of got that muscular, tight, just buff look to it. I love that about this bike. I can only imagine what this thing would sound like with an exhaust can and a tail tidy. There's so many things I would like to do if I could ever get my hands on one of these bikes long term. But all we've got to do is look to the 2017 CBR 1000 to get any hints, because that's what this motorcycle's engine is based from. So it's even got some hot rod racing pedigree to go along with it. Guys, look, I could go on and on about this Hornet 1000 SP. All I can tell you is this. Get over to Stubbs, get over to your local Honda dealership. If they've got one of these bikes, just grab the keys to one of these things and demo it. It is one of the most fun bikes that I've ridden in a very long time. And I think that if you get out there and give it a shot, you'll probably dig it just as much as I do. But with that, guys, post up your comments. Let me know what you think about that bike. Again, I will be posting the ride-along video in the description. Let me know what you think about that too. And with that, that's a wrap. Take care, guys.